Jake Morrison sat in the cold metal chair and stared across the massive table at the 7 alien beings who controlled the galaxy. The Galactic Council chamber stretched high above them with its gleaming walls and floating displays that showed star maps and trade routes. Each of the 7 council members represented billions of lives across hundreds of worlds. They looked down at Jake from their elevated seats like judges ready to pass sentence. The human ambassador had walked these halls for 12 years now. He had seen the council make decisions that sent human soldiers to die in wars they did not start. He had watched them trade human lives like currency to keep peace between species that viewed his people as useful animals. Today would be different. Today the council would learn that humans were not animals and they were not slaves. Council. Prime Zethkar raised his 4 arms and spoke in the deep rumbling voice that had commanded respect for 3 centuries. His blue-scaled skin reflected the chamber lights as his black eyes focused on Jake. The translator implant in Jake's ear converted the alien words into English but could not hide the arrogance in the tone. Ambassador Morrison, the High Council has reached a decision regarding the refugee crisis in the Outer Rim territories. The failed Kethmori expansion has left 40 billion beings without homes. They require immediate resettlement to prevent a humanitarian disaster that could destabilize 3 sectors. Jake kept his face blank, but his hands tightened slightly on the armrests of his chair. He knew what was coming. The council always had the same solution to every problem. Send humans. To fix it, send humans to die for it. Send humans to pay the price while other species reap the benefits. The council requires humanity to surrender 23 of your colony worlds to house these refugees. Your people will be relocated to designated areas on remaining worlds. This temporary measure will demonstrate humanity's continued commitment to galactic peace and prosperity. The words hit Jake like physical blows, but he had expected them. Intelligence reports from Captain Lisa Wade on the Rim had warned him this demand was coming. Lisa's forces had been fighting the Kethmori for 18 months while Council species sat safely in their core worlds. 2 million human soldiers had died keeping the alien expansion from reaching populated systems. Now the Council wanted to reward that sacrifice by stealing human homes. Ambassador Tavel of the Zenthok Collective leaned forward in her seat. Her insect-like features clicked as she spoke. The human colonies chosen for resettlement are strategically located and well-developed. Your species has proven excellent at creating livable worlds from hostile environments. The refugees will benefit greatly from human engineering and agricultural advances. Jake almost smiled at the casual way she described stealing the work of billions of humans. The colonies they wanted had been built over 2 centuries by people who had left Earth seeking better lives among the stars. They had transformed barren rocks into garden worlds through backbreaking labor and brilliant innovation. Now aliens wanted to take those worlds because humans had made them too valuable to leave in human hands. Council member Vartok of the Hegemony spoke next. His reptilian head bobbed as he gestured with clawed hands. Of course, humanity will be compensated for this sacrifice. The Council offers continued membership in the galactic community. Your trade privileges will remain intact. Your military will retain its peacekeeping duties and the honor that comes with service to galactic civilization. The honor of service. Jake had heard that phrase 10,000 times in his years as ambassador. It was the Council's favorite way to describe sending humans to die. Honor in dying for people who saw you as expendable. Honor in sacrificing your children so alien children could sleep safely. Honor in watching your species bleed while others prospered. The resettlement will begin immediately, Zethkar continued. Council fleets are already moving to assist with the transition. We estimate the process will take no more than 6 months to complete. Humanity's cooperation in this matter will be noted favorably in all future council deliberations. Jake stood slowly from his chair. The 7 council members watched him with expressions ranging from boredom to mild curiosity. They had delivered ultimatums to hundreds of species over the centuries. Most begged for better terms or tried to negotiate minor concessions. Some accepted with quiet dignity. A few raged and threatened before ultimately submitting to council authority. None had ever surprised them. The United Earth Federation has carefully considered your proposal, Jake said in a steady voice that carried clearly through the vast chamber. Our response is simple and final, no. The single word seemed to echo in the sudden silence. Zethkara's 4 eyes widened in what might have been surprise or confusion. Tavel's insect features twitched rapidly. Vartuk's claws clicked against his armrest. Furthermore, Jake continued before any of them could speak, humanity hereby withdraws from all council obligations, treaties, and agreements. Effective immediately, human military forces will cease all peacekeeping operations. Human medical personnel will withdraw from alien worlds. Human engineers will abandon their infrastructure projects. Human merchants will terminate their trade. Relationships with council species. The chamber erupted in a cacophony of alien voices as the 7 council members spoke at once. Their translators created a babble of overlapping English words filled with shock and anger. Jake waited patiently for them to quiet down. He had dreamed of this moment for years. Zethkar finally restored order by slamming his primary fist on the table. You cannot simply walk away, Morrison. Your species depends on us for trade, technology, and protection. Without council support, humanity will wither and die in isolation. Jake smiled then, the first emotion he had shown since entering the chamber. It was not a pleasant expression. No, Council Prime, you depend on us. You have always depended on us. You simply never bothered to notice. Human arrogance, Tavel spat. Your species contributes raw military force and basic labor. We provide civilization, culture, and advanced technology. You are nothing without us. Are we? Jake asked quietly. When Neshan Plague threatened to wipe out your entire species 3 years ago, who developed the cure? Human doctors. When the Yulani trade wars disrupted shipping throughout the core worlds, who restored order? Human peacekeepers. When the Outer Rim territories needed terraforming to support refugee populations from the last crisis, who transformed dead worlds into gardens? Human engineers. The council members exchanged glances that Jake could not read. Alien expressions were hard to interpret, but he sensed the first stirrings of uncertainty. You mistake service for weakness, Jake continued. You confuse generosity with stupidity. For 3 centuries, humans have bled and died and sacrificed to maintain your precious galactic civilization. We did it because we believed in the ideals you claim to represent. Peace, cooperation, mutual aid between species. We were fools, Zethkar leaned forward. If you withdraw from council protection, other species will see you as fair targets. Pirates will raid your shipping. Hostile empires will attack your colonies. You will beg us to take you back within a year. Jake's smile widened. Will we? I suppose we'll find out. The human fleet is already receiving withdrawal orders. By this time tomorrow, every human soldier, doctor, engineer, and diplomat will be heading home. You'll finally get what you've always wanted, a galaxy without human interference. He turned and walked toward the chamber doors without waiting for permission to leave. Behind him, the 7 most powerful beings in the galaxy sat in stunned silence, perhaps for the first time truly considering what they were about to lose. Admiral Ryan Carter stood on the bridge of the UFS Defiance and watched the emergency transmission from Earth flicker on the main screen. President Helen Murphy's face appeared tired but determined as she delivered orders that would change the galaxy forever. Behind her stood the Joint Chiefs of Staff and the Emergency Council that had been meeting nonstop since Jake Morrison walked out of the Galactic Council chamber. All human military forces are ordered to withdraw immediately from active theaters. The President said, no gradual transitions. No handover procedures. No negotiations with local commanders or alien governments. Pack up and come home. This order takes effect in 6 hours. Ryan felt a strange mixture of relief and anticipation flow through him. For 30 years he had commanded human fleets in service to the galaxy. He had watched good soldiers die protecting aliens who saw them as expendable tools. He had followed orders to sacrifice human lives for the greater galactic good while alien species kept their own people safely away from danger. Today all of that ended. The bridge crew around him worked with quiet efficiency to relay the withdrawal orders to every human ship and station in the sector. Communications Officer Jenny Walsh coordinated with fleet commanders across 17 systems. Navigation Chief Pete Johnson began plotting the fastest routes back to human space. Within minutes, the entire fleet was preparing to abandon positions they had held for decades. On the surface of Kalos 7, General Patricia Hayes walked through the military compound that had been humanity's forward base for 40 years. Her soldiers moved quickly to pack equipment and load transports while explosions echoed in the distance. The war between the Kalosi and the Dreth had been raging for 3 generations, but human peacekeepers had kept it from becoming total genocide. Now, the 2 alien species would have to find their own way to peace or destroy each other trying. Kalosi. Prime Minister Estal approached Patricia with desperate eyes and trembling hands. His gray skin had turned pale with fear, and his voice cracked as he spoke through the translator. General Hayes, please reconsider. Without human forces to maintain the ceasefire, my people will be slaughtered within days. The Dreth have been preparing for this opportunity. Patricia felt a moment of sympathy for the alien leader, but her orders were clear. Prime Minister, your people have had 40 years to make real peace with the Dreth. Instead, you used that time to build more weapons, while humans died keeping you apart. Perhaps facing the consequences of your choices will teach you what we could not. She climbed into the transport as Kalosi civilians gathered at the base perimeter. Many of them held signs written in broken English begging the humans to stay. Children who had grown up under human protection cried as the ships lifted off. Patricia watched through the viewport as the compound grew smaller below them. By tonight, Kalosi and Dreth forces would be fighting over the abandoned weapons and supplies. Halfway across the galaxy on Nesha Station, Dr. Kevin Brooks supervised the evacuation of the human medical corps. 37 doctors and 400 medical technicians worked around the clock to pack equipment that had kept entire species from extinction. The medical bay that had saved millions of lives over the past decade would be empty before the next shift began. Veshan Healer. Mlana followed Kevin through the corridors as human medics removed machines and computers. Her forearms gestured frantically as she tried to make him understand what his departure would mean. Dr. Brooks, you cannot take the genetic sequencing equipment. We still have 17 patients in critical condition from the neural plague outbreak. Without human medical technology, they will die. Kevin stopped loading a portable surgical unit and looked at the desperate healer. Mlana, your people chose to treat mine as servants rather than partners. The Veshan Medical Authority refused to share research data with human doctors for security reasons. You wanted the benefits of our work without giving us equal status. Now you can practice medicine the way your people did before humans arrived. But the patients, Mlana began, will receive the same level of care that Veshans provided for thousands of years before meeting humans, Kevin replied. You have your own doctors and your own equipment. Use them. The evacuation continued as alien medical staff watched in horror. Human innovations had revolutionized treatment protocols throughout the galaxy. Surgical techniques developed by human doctors had cut mortality rates in half. Diagnostic equipment built by human engineers could identify diseases that alien medicine had never understood. In 6 hours, all of that knowledge and technology would disappear from alien space on Earth. President Murphy prepared for the most important speech of her career. The communications team had arranged for broadcast on every human channel and most alien networks throughout the galaxy. This would be humanity's formal announcement to the galaxy. The 3 centuries of service had ended. She stood behind the presidential podium in the Oval Office as cameras began recording. The weight of history pressed down on her shoulders as she thought about the words that would reshape galactic civilization. Behind the cameras stood her advisors and the military commanders who had helped plan humanity's withdrawal. They all knew this moment would be remembered for centuries. My fellow humans and citizens of the galaxy, she began. For 300 years, humanity has served the galactic community with honor and sacrifice. We have bled for your peace. We have died for your prosperity. We have given our children's futures to protect your worlds. Today that service ends. The president paused to let her words sink in across thousands of worlds. The Galactic Council has made clear that they view humanity as servants rather than partners. They demand our worlds, our resources, and our lives while offering nothing in return but the privilege of continued servitude. We reject their ultimatum and we reject their authority over human affairs. Across the galaxy, alien leaders watched in growing panic as the human president continued. Trade Minister Cavil of the Commercial Guild calculated the economic impact of losing human shipping protection. Military Commander Thrax of the Defense Coalition realized that human peacekeeping forces maintain stability in 43 active conflict zones. Medical Director Yosef of the Galactic Health Organization understood that human research had prevented 6 different species extinctions in the past decade alone. Effective immediately, all human military forces will withdraw from alien territories, President Murphy announced. Human medical personnel will return to Earth. Human engineers will abandon their projects. Human merchants will terminate their contracts. We are going home. The transmission ended and left the galaxy in stunned silence. Within hours the first reports began arriving. Human fleets were powering down defensive positions and heading toward Earth. Medical stations were going dark as human doctors evacuated. Construction projects worth trillions of credits sat abandoned as human engineers departed on the bridge of the Defiance. Admiral Carter watched his fleet form up for the journey home. 43 ships that had protected this sector for 2 decades turned away from their patrol routes and set course for human space. Behind them, trade ships huddled together without escorts. Alien colonies that depended on human protection sent desperate pleas for the ships to return. The Admiral ignored them all. The great human withdrawal had begun, and there would be no turning back. 6 months had passed since the last human warship left alien space and the galaxy was burning. Council Prime Zethkar stared at the holographic displays surrounding his command center and watched civilization collapse in real time. Red warning. Lights flashed across dozens of star systems where conflicts had erupted without human peacekeepers to contain them. Trade routes that had operated safely for centuries now showed as dangerous or completely impassable. Entire sectors reported communication blackouts as infrastructure failed without human maintenance. The emergency session had been running for 18 hours straight. Council members who once spoke with absolute authority now argued desperately about problems they could not solve. The 7 beings who had controlled galactic affairs for centuries found themselves powerless to stop the chaos. Their arrogance had unleashed Ambassador Tavra of the Zenthok Collective slammed her fist against the conference table hard enough to crack the ancient stone surface. Her insect features clicked rapidly as she spoke in the rapid bursts that indicated extreme agitation among her people. The Kathmori-Ilani War has spread to 12 systems. Without human intervention, the death toll has reached 2 billion beings in just 6 months. My own colonies are requesting emergency evacuation as refugee fleets overwhelm our defenses. Vartuk of the hegemony hissed through his sharp teeth. The situation in the Outer Rim is beyond catastrophic. Entire civilizations have simply disappeared. No communications, no shipping, no signs of organized government. Pirates and raiders control everything beyond the core worlds. My trade fleets refuse to venture past the inner systems without escort. Zethkar felt the weight of leadership pressing down on his 4 shoulders as he reviewed the latest casualty reports. The numbers were beyond anything in recorded galactic history. Wars that human peacekeepers had contained for decades exploded into genocidal conflicts. Medical emergencies that human doctors routinely handled killed millions. Infrastructure that human engineers maintained collapsed and left entire worlds without power or water to the Zarian Prime. Plague report made him physically ill to read. A simple bacterial infection that human medical teams could have cured in hours had mutated without proper treatment. 200 million Zarians died in agony. Over 3 weeks, while their own doctors struggled with treatments that were centuries behind human medical science. The planet was now under complete quarantine with the survivors, begging for help that would never come. Council member Hithal of the Aquatic Union spoke from her water-filled chamber. My people are dying from diseases we eliminated centuries ago. The human doctors took their medical databases with them. We cannot replicate their treatments or their equipment. Our own medical knowledge seems primitive by comparison. Because it is primitive, snapped Ambassador Krell of the Mountain Worlds. We became dependent on human innovation while our own scientists grew lazy and complacent. Now we pay the price for our arrogance. The accusations and blame flew around the chamber as 7 civilizations faced the reality of their situation. For 300 years, they had used human capabilities to solve problems while treating humans as inferior beings. They had grown so accustomed to human solutions that they forgot how to handle galactic affairs without human involvement. Now they were learning that humans had not been servants at all. They had been the foundation holding everything together. On the trade station orbiting Centauri Beta, Captain Tony Russell of the merchant vessel Free Spirit found himself surrounded by desperate aliens begging for help. The human captain had chosen to remain in galactic space when the withdrawal began. His small cargo ship had become a beacon of hope for beings who were discovering what life without humans really meant. A group of Veshan merchants approached his docking bay with credits and precious metals to trade for basic medical supplies. Their species had once dismissed human medicine as crude and unsophisticated. Now they offered their life savings for antibiotics that human factories produce cheaply. Tony sold them what he could, but his ship carried cargo for trade, not emergency relief for an entire galaxy. Captain Russell, the lead merchant pleaded through his translator, my world has lost 30% of our population to diseases your people could have prevented. We need doctors, medical equipment, anything you can provide. Tony looked at the alien with genuine sympathy. I'm sorry, but I'm just one ship with one crew. What you need is the entire human medical corps that your leaders drove away. I can't replace what they provided. Similar scenes played out on every world where humans had once worked. The absence of human peacekeepers meant that minor disputes escalated into planetary wars. The lack of human engineers left critical infrastructure to decay and fail. The departure of human doctors turned manageable health problems into extinction-level events. Back on Galactic Council Station, the emergency sessions continued day and night. Representatives from member species arrived hourly with new reports of disasters and pleas for assistance that the Council could not provide. The beings who had once commanded fleets and controlled star systems found themselves helpless to restore order to the chaos they had created. We must contact Earth immediately, declared Ambassador Veltar of the Merchant Federation. Offer them anything they want. Full council membership with voting rights, technology transfers, territory grants, whatever it takes to bring them back. Zethkar activated the long-range communications array that could reach human space. The message traveled across the galaxy at faster-than-light speeds, carrying the desperate plea of 7 civilizations. The Council waited 3 days for a response that never came. Earth maintained complete radio silence toward all alien communications. They're not going to answer, Tavares said quietly. We destroyed 3 centuries of trust and cooperation in a single afternoon. Why would they help us now? The truth of her words settled over the council chamber like a funeral shroud. They had treated humanity's greatest gift to the galaxy as worthless service from an inferior species. They had demanded human sacrifice while offering nothing in return but the privilege of continued exploitation. Now that humanity was gone, they finally understood what they had lost. Reports continued to arrive from across the galaxy. The Yolani homeworld had fallen to Kathmori assault fleets without human peacekeepers to maintain the buffer zones. The great trade network that connected 60 species had collapsed without human protection for merchant vessels. Medical research stations that had prevented dozens of plagues shut down without human scientists to maintain them. Zethkar looked around the council chamber at his fellow leaders and saw his own desperation reflected in their alien faces. They ruled the most advanced civilizations in the galaxy, but they were powerless to save their own people from the consequences of driving away the beings who had truly held everything together. The galaxy was learning a lesson that humanity had tried to teach through 3 centuries of service. True strength came not from commanding others, but from choosing to help them. Real power lay not in taking what you wanted, but in giving what others needed. And the greatest tragedy of all was that they were learning this lesson far too late to matter. 1 year had passed since humanity walked away, and Council Prime Zethkar stood on the bridge of the Council flagship as it approached Earth's solar system. Never in galactic history had the head of the Council traveled to visit a lesser species on their homeworld. The very idea would have been unthinkable just 2 years ago, when humans were still considered useful servants rather than equals. Now Zethkar led a delegation of 700 ambassadors representing every major civilization in the galaxy as they came to beg for humanity's return. The journey to Earth had taken 3 weeks through space lanes that were no longer safe. Pirate fleets controlled most of the outer routes, and even council ships traveled in fear without human escorts. The flagship's captain had been forced to take a longer path through heavily defended core systems to avoid raiders who would have attacked even the most important diplomatic mission in galactic history. The irony was not lost on anyone aboard that they needed human protection just to reach the humans they had driven away. Earth's defense grid detected the alien fleet while it was still days out from the inner system. Human military satellites tracked every ship and identified each species represented in the diplomatic convoy. The massive alien delegation waited 3 full days in the outer asteroid belt before receiving permission to approach Earth. During those 3 days, they listened to radio silence from the blue world that had once sent its children to die for galactic peace. When permission finally came, it was brief and cold. A single transmission from Earth Traffic Control directed them to land at Geneva Spaceport. No ceremony, no honor guard, no diplomatic protocol. Just coordinates and landing instructions, delivered in the flat tone reserved for routine cargo shipments. The beings who once commanded the respect of hundreds of worlds were being treated like unwelcome visitors. Requesting basic landing rights, Secretary of State Paul Anderson waited for them in a simple conference room at the United Nations building. The contrast could not have been more striking. 700 representatives from dozens of species crowded into a space designed for human-sized meetings. They faced a single human sitting behind a plain wooden desk in an ordinary business suit. Paul had once been humanity's junior trade representative to minor commercial committees. Now he held all the power while galactic leaders begged for his attention. Zethkar abandoned all diplomatic protocol as he stepped forward with his 4 arms spread in supplication. His blue scales seemed to have lost their luster during the year of galactic chaos, and his black eyes showed exhaustion that came from months of sleepless nights managing an impossible situation. Secretary Anderson, we come before you in desperation. Name your price. Full council membership with voting privileges. Complete technology transfers, territory grants. Access to our most protected research, anything you want. Paul looked at the massive delegation with the same expression he might use to examine an interesting insect. You misunderstand the situation. Council Prime, we're not negotiating, we're not returning. We're done? The words hit the assembled aliens like physical blows. Ambassador Tavara of the Zenthok Collective stepped forward with her insect features clicking rapidly in distress. But you must understand what has happened. Our entire galactic economy has collapsed. Trade has fallen by 80%. Entire sectors have reverted to pre-spaceflight barbarism. Billions are dying from conflicts you could stop and diseases you could cure. Dr. Elena Garcia entered the room carrying a thick folder of reports. She had once been Earth's chief medical advisor to the galaxy, traveling throughout alien space to handle medical emergencies that local doctors could not manage. Now she served as Earth's Director of Internal Health Services, and her expertise was reserved entirely for human benefit. She placed the folder on the desk in front of Paul and opened it to pages. covered with statistics that painted a picture of galactic catastrophe. In the past year, Elena said in the calm voice of someone reciting medical data, estimated galactic casualties from preventable diseases total 400 million beings. Casualties from conflicts we would have stopped number 200 billion. Casualties from collapsed infrastructure we maintained are incalculable because most affected worlds have lost the ability to report accurate numbers. Ambassador Cathara of the Merchant Guild fell to her knees in front of Paul's desk. Her proud species had once controlled most of the galaxy's trade networks, but now their ships sat in port because the routes were too dangerous to travel. These numbers prove you need to return immediately. Every day you delay means more death and suffering. Paul closed the folder and looked at the kneeling alien with no expression of sympathy. No, Ambassador. These numbers prove you need us. There's a difference. Vartuk of the hegemony hissed in frustration. His reptilian features flushed dark with anger as he struggled to understand how humans could ignore such massive suffering. Your own moral code demands that you help those in need. How can you sit in comfort while billions die? Our moral code, Paul replied quietly, also demands that we value ourselves and our children above those who see us as expendable tools. For 3 centuries we helped those in need while you treated us like servants. We died for your peace, while you kept your own people safe. We sacrificed our futures for your benefit while you gave us nothing in return but the privilege of continued service. That ends now. The delegation erupted in desperate voices as representatives tried to speak over each other. They offered territory, technology, wealth, and power in exchange for humanity's return. They promised equal treatment and full respect for human rights. They swore sacred oaths that humans would never again be asked to bear burdens that other species would not share. Paul listened to their offers with growing amusement. You promised to treat us as equals now that you need us. Where were these promises when you had our service? You offer us technology that you refused to share when we were bleeding for you. You promised respect that you denied us for 300 years. Why should we believe you now? Zethkar stepped forward again, his voice breaking with desperation. Because we have learned. The galaxy has learned. We understand now what we lost when we drove you away. We know the value of human sacrifice and human innovation. We will never take you for granted again. Will you? Paul asked. Or will you simply be more careful about how you exploit us? Will you treat us as partners, or will you find subtler ways to use us as tools? The galaxy didn't learn respect for humanity. The galaxy learned that it needs human service to survive. Those are very different lessons. Elena spoke from beside the desk where she had been watching the alien delegation with clinical interest. The medical data supports Secretary Anderson's assessment. Alien medical research has made no significant advances in the past year. Instead of developing their own solutions, most species have focused on attempts to recreate human innovations. They want our knowledge, not to develop their own. The truth of her words settled over the conference room like poison gas. The aliens had not used the past year to become stronger or more independent. They had spent their time trying to replace human services rather than learning to provide for themselves. Even now they came to Earth not as partners seeking cooperation, but as clients demanding that their service provider return to work. Paul stood from his chair and looked out the window at the Swiss mountains beyond. The galaxy always assumed we needed you more than you needed us. You were wrong. The past year has proven that beyond any doubt. Whether we return isn't up to us anymore. It's up to you to become worthy of our return. 5 years had passed since humanity walked away from the galaxy, and Commander Beth Williams stood in the intelligence center beneath Geneva watching holographic displays that showed a transformed universe. The galaxy that existed now bore little resemblance to the one that had once demanded human service and sacrifice. Entire civilizations had vanished from the star maps. Others had been reduced to single worlds struggling to maintain basic technology. The few species that survived had done so by learning lessons that the old galactic order had refused to teach. The reports coming in from deep Space told a story of fundamental change. The Kethmori Empire that had once threatened dozens of systems was now a collection of isolated colonies barely capable of interplanetary travel. The Yulani Confederation had split into 7 smaller governments that spent more time cooperating than fighting. The Veshan Medical Authority had been replaced by a joint research council that included representatives from 12 species, working together instead of competing for dominance. Beth reviewed the latest intelligence summary prepared by her analysts. Total galactic population has decreased by approximately 40%, she read aloud to the assembled staff. However, active conflicts have decreased by 70%. Species that survived the collapse show increased cooperation and resource sharing. The old pattern of powerful empires dominating weaker civilizations appears to be breaking down. Agent Mike Torres looked up from his console where he monitored communications intercepts from across the galaxy. The survivors are building something different. The new Deshan Zenthok Medical Alliance shared their research data freely with 6 other species last month. The Reformed Merchant Guild requires member species to contribute equally to trade protection instead of relying on hired peacekeepers. The transformation had not been painless. Billions had died in the conflicts and disasters that followed humanity's withdrawal. Entire species had chosen extinction rather than change their fundamental approach to civilization. But those who survived seemed to have learned that cooperation worked better than exploitation. They built alliances based on mutual benefit rather than dominance. They shared knowledge instead of hoarding it for advantage. In Earth's orbital shipyards, Admiral Ryan Carter toured the newest addition to humanity's fleet. The UFS Endeavour represented 5 years of human innovation freed from the burden of serving alien interests. Its technology was centuries beyond anything the old galaxy had possessed. Its medical facilities could cure diseases that had once wiped out entire worlds. Its defensive systems could protect entire solar systems from invasion. We've advanced more in 5 years than in the previous 50. Chief Engineer Lisa Park explained as they walked through the ship's corridors. Without the constant demands for military support and emergency response, our scientists and engineers could focus on pure research. We've made breakthroughs in physics, medicine, and engineering that seemed impossible under the old system. The advancement had been staggering. Human technology now operated on principles that made the old galactic standard look primitive. Medical knowledge had expanded to the point where human doctors could treat conditions that alien science considered incurable. Agricultural techniques had advanced enough to turn any world into a garden paradise within years instead of generations. On Mars Colony, Dr. Amy Carter finished her training at the Colonial Medical Institute and prepared for her first assignment beyond human space. She was Admiral Carter's daughter, but she had earned her position through skill and dedication rather than family connections. Like hundreds of other young humans, she had chosen to venture back into the galaxy, not as a representative of Earth, but as an individual seeking to help where help was needed. Remember, her instructor Dr. James Blake told the graduating class, "You go as private citizens, not as agents of Earth. You represent only yourselves and your commitment to healing. The galaxy must learn to value what you offer rather than demand what you provide." Amy understood the distinction. The humans who returned to galactic space did so on their own terms. They worked where they chose to work. They helped who they chose to help. They accepted payment or refused it based on their own judgment. Most importantly, they could leave whenever they wanted without asking permission from anyone. The scattered humans throughout the galaxy had become legends. Captain Tony Russell's merchant ship Free Spirit was welcomed at every port as a symbol of hope and fair dealing. Dr. Kevin Brooks had established a medical clinic on the neutral world of Haven, where he treated patients from dozens of species, without regard for their government's politics. Engineer Sarah Martinez had helped rebuild the infrastructure on 3 worlds destroyed by the collapse, working alongside local crews as an equal partner rather than a superior expert. These individual humans served as examples of what cooperation could accomplish when based on respect rather than exploitation. They showed alien species that humans had not been servants but partners all along. The difference was that now the partnership was voluntary on both sides. President Helen Murphy, now in her third term, occasionally reviewed the diplomatic messages that arrived from the reformed galactic governments. The new Galactic Cooperation Council sent monthly reports on their activities. The Reformed Medical Alliance shared research data that might interest human scientists. The Independent Trade Federation offered partnership opportunities in emerging markets. Earth's response remained consistent. Polite acknowledgement but no official commitment. Individual humans were free to engage with alien civilizations if they chose. Earth would protect its citizens throughout the galaxy but would not sign treaties or make promises on behalf of humanity as a whole. The galaxy had proven that it could not be trusted with such agreements. In his retirement home overlooking Lake Geneva, former Ambassador Jake Morrison tended his garden and occasionally taught classes at the Geneva Diplomatic Academy. Young humans preparing for careers in interstellar relations came to learn from the man who had walked away from the galaxy's most powerful council. His lessons were simple but profound. The galaxy confused strength with weakness and service with servitude, he told his current class of eager students. They thought we needed their approval more than they needed our protection. They were wrong about that. They were wrong about us. Whether we return to full galactic involvement isn't our decision to make anymore. It's theirs. A student raised her hand. But Professor Morrison, don't we have a responsibility to help them? People are still dying from problems we could solve. Jake considered the question carefully, as he had done thousands of times over the past 5 years. We have a responsibility to value ourselves and our children above those who would exploit us. The galaxy lost something when they drove us away. They lost their moral center along with our protection. They confused service with slavery and partnership with exploitation. If they want us back, they must prove they've learned the difference. The student pressed further. How would they prove that? By becoming worthy of partnership instead of demanding service, Jake replied. By offering genuine cooperation instead of expecting sacrifice. By showing respect instead of assuming superiority. The old galaxy is gone and it deserved to die. If a new one emerges that values what we offer rather than taking what we provide, then perhaps we'll consider joining it. Until then, we wait. Through the classroom windows, the peaceful Earth sky stretched endlessly blue above mountains that had never known alien occupation or exploitation. Humanity had found something in isolation that it had never possessed while serving the galaxy. They had found their own worth and learned to protect it. The galaxy could have that gift too if it proved worthy of receiving it.